Rick, I want to read you this tweet. Is the instruction industry's self-interest in opposition to golfers being taught to figure things out on their own?
Oh, gosh, who the hell would write something like that?
And folks, without further ado, we have two-time PGA Tour winner and now master golf instructor, Rick Fehr, on the program. It's truly an honor to have you here. I've never spoken with a PGA Tour winner in length at all before.
Well, it's great to join you. Yeah, some of us are still kicking around at this age. And yeah, I was fortunate to have a nice playing career.
We need to know about your origin story. I know you started off on the golf course, Sandpoint, and your first instructor was Ron Hagen, affectionately known as the Little General. He gave you some fairly basic lessons early on. What kind of lessons did he give you?
It's been a number of years, but the way I remember it was that it was the fundamentals back in the day, how to hold it. In that era, it was kind of waist high, get toe up and going back, and then post impact toe up again. So kind of a matching club face, entry, exit sort of thing. The most significant part of the story is that I was privileged. I had access to a golf course. My parents are members at a private club, and I could play a boatload of golf if I wanted to. And I really think that was key in my development.
In terms of your basic grip instruction, was your first lesson saying like, look, you should be able to see 3 knuckles on the left hand, or how specific in detail? Because nowadays, every joint of your finger is analyzed.
Back in that era, 1 knuckle of your top hand visible was sort of neutral. That would be a little bit on the weak side, I suppose, by today's standards. So I had predominantly fairly weak grip. As far as I don't recall, there was a lot of talk about, hey, is it sitting at the base of the fingers or is it in the palm and different things like that. But it was like, yeah, the V in my lower right hand kind of pointing towards between my right ear and my right shoulder, somewhere up in there. And then the 1 knuckle, 1 knuckle on the top hand. And I'm not a real stickler. I mean, there's in my coaching, there's obviously cause and effect, which is super important. But let's face it, we've got elite ball strikers with all sorts of grips, primarily the top hand. You'll see 3 to 4 knuckles, and you'll see 1 Morikawa and Spieth versus DJ, and just got to figure out how to match it all up.
How about in terms of your early lessons in terms of alignment? Were you putting clubs down on the ground to make sure your feet were parallel to the target line, or how did you master that portion of the basics?
I don't recall that really being preached heavily. So obviously you want some pattern of consistency is how you set up to the golf ball. I'm sort of a free spirit when it comes to coaching, but it's like we can all find examples of so many players that aim significantly left and those that don't. And so as long as it's functional and repeatable, I'm okay with it. But as far as my learning, no, I didn't have clubs laying down. I mean, it was kind of pre-alignment stick days. So we take our 1 iron and lay it down there. That's kind of our alignment stick. And I kind of joke a little bit. I said that, the ball doesn't know where the body's lined up. And so I think I could aim, 20 degrees left and hit a decent shot at the target. Now, whether that's wise to do that or not, but I think there's some things that I think golfers are tied up in an awful lot of details these days. And I just don't think that they're all vital to playing good golf.
I know you're not a fan of this overly structured pre-shot routine.
Yeah, we just have to get in the right mindset to pull the trigger. And I think sometimes if somebody's mind is occupied by a routine, meaning like you are consciously thinking about how many waggles or how many seconds and all that sort of stuff. Science tells us that your prefrontal cortex or your conscious mind can handle 50 bits of information per second, whereas the other region of your brain can handle millions per second. So I just, okay, what do we really want with that limited RAM? The little that we can consciously think about. What do you want to do with it? And I don't think counting waggles is a very smart move. I think a lot of people lose awareness of target, lose awareness of what they're trying to create, and because they're kind of locked into whether it be lining up, little overtaxing on the alignment or routine. So it's a good idea to have a flow and have sort of a way you do things, but I'd say pull the trigger when you're ready and the mind's in the right place.
What's your way to get in this right flow state so that you can pull the trigger? What do you do to step into a shot so that, okay, I'm comfortable over the ball, I'm relaxed, and I'm ready to go?
There's an awful lot how that could be broken out, but I would say that if you can get into where you're reacting to the target, or for those that are visual and actually picture a ball flight, some people would say, well, that's a more highly skilled player. Like for me, even though my skills have diminished a lot in the last 20 years, if somebody mentions high draw, for example, not literally, but I can kind of feel that in my body. Like I know that movement pattern. But I would say, picture what you're trying to get the golf ball to do, and let it go. Usually it's the interference, and it's very difficult to play good golf, as you know, when you're thinking of what we call internal thoughts, like, oh, what's my right elbow need to do, or what does my left wrist have to do? That's again going back to your 50 bits of information you can process, that you're going to get overloaded. I'd say most golfers, when I say most, I'm talking about a very high percentage. When they're hitting golf shots, they've got way, way too much going on upstairs. So when I work with students and we do need to make technical changes to their golf swing, we got to recognize that we need to get past the conscious thought of the movement and get back to playing golf, which is simply, kind of picture where you want to go, choose a good target, picture it going there and let it rip. So as far as flow, part of it is to use your RAM in a productive manner. And then the other is, the mindset stuff about all of us, our egos are attached to outcomes. And that's a whole nother, you might kind of get a sports psychologist on, but I've studied that stuff quite a bit. That, there's no question that when you can get in the right mindset, you have a better chance of pulling off a decent shot.
In terms of pulling the trigger, do you teach any swing triggers, like pushing your hands ahead a little bit, kicking the right knee in? Do you do anything like that so that gets them into that, okay, we're ready to go state?
I think most of us do that better if we move from movement. I had kind of a trigger at the start of my swing that isn't necessarily anything I teach, but I had a little bit of a bump of a forward press. And so it was kind of like, since I'm going to start moving to the right, whether that's lateral or rotational or whatever we were doing, that's easier if we go from kind of lead side to trail side. So you'll see, if anybody's watched, the long drive guys, they're rocking and rolling back and forth. So when they're trying to make the big aggressive move away from the ball, they've bumped forward first to then create forces going the other way. So some people, it's a knee bump, others, whatever it is. But a little bit of motion prior to the club moving away from the golf ball is not a bad thing.
So now back to your junior days, you're getting very good very fast from playing a lot, I'm assuming.
You haven't seen the full picture, but you can tell I'm an elite athlete, right? So
right. No,
I'm joking, but I played other sports. So I came into golf, I've been, good baseball player, decent basketball player, other things. So I had developed probably some strength and athleticism that then, I kind of put a golf club in the hands. And so I progressed quickly, but to your point that you're getting into, that, I fell in love with it. I had access. I played a lot of golf, and, just kind of, and I think I still, to this day, I think I'm kind of naturally inquisitive and kind of a learner, and started making some cause and effect correlations kind of even at a young age. Like, well, if I do this, what does the ball do? And so that discovery, without much coaching, I think served me well.
At what point are you scratch?
Wow. I'd say probably by the time I was 13 or so.
Okay, so your parents started you when you were 11 or so. You had some basic lessons. You're playing a lot of golf, and you've essentially mastered the game in 2 years. Are your parents pushing you to pursue this as a career, or because I know in the end you ended up doing a degree at BYU in finance. Mm-hmm. So you kind of kept the brain working, but you had these crazy golf skills.
Yeah, and I think that's probably not that unusual even today. I mean, it's like, I know a lot of the players from overseas, some of them choose a pathway that doesn't include a college education or whatever, but that was kind of the normal pathway. And it's kind of like, for an aspiring professional, it's kind of like, well, that college education is kind of that backup plan kind of thing, right? So,
right.
The progression of winning tournaments continued, right? So beyond junior golf, I won some college tournaments and that sort of thing, and amateur events in the summer. So the track continued. As far as my parents' involvement, just super supportive, but not, not super involved like today. It was more, I jumped on my bicycle and rode up to the course and, played and worked in the golf shop, cleaning members clubs and cleaning golf carts and picking range balls. And caddying and all that stuff at the younger age. And then off to school I went on a scholarship and had success there. But my mom's nerves couldn't handle watching me play. And then and my dad was working, so often I'd get just dropped off at the junior tournament and they'd come pick me up when it's over. So they weren't out watching every shot like a lot of parents do today. And I think I was good. I mean, I never felt a lack of support. I felt full support. But again, I think that independence served me well, right? That I'm a big believer in that, hey, the golfer, once they tee off, it's like, yeah, we're sitting out in the wilderness. You got your Swiss Army knife and there's bears and snakes out there. And I'll see you in 4.5 hours. Hopefully you're still alive. But I think that somebody go and learn and figure it out on their own is a good thing.
But your father, in his own right, was a great golfer.
Correct. Yeah. So he did win one year. He won the Washington State Open, beat the local pros, including a tour player at the time, Kermit Zarley, and 20 or 21 time club champion at the Sandpoint. He was captain of the golf team at Yale back in the day in the 50s. And so, yeah, a strong pedigree of, I don't know if DNA, helps, but he had a great short game, great putter. And certainly that was a strength of my game as well. I think part of it has to do with the course that you've mentioned, Sandpoint. It's short, hilly, tricky greens, fast, slope, all that stuff. So when I landed at Augusta playing as an amateur in '83, I adapted quickly to sort of those conditions, and it wasn't much of a struggle. So I had a lot of good things working for me.
84 Masters, 35-inch ping answer 2, 0-3 putts.
I don't know green speeds. They sure seemed super fast back then. Maybe they're a touch quicker now. Greens were quick then, and exceptional leg putting, a lot of 8-foot second putts at times, right? Because there's sometimes you get yourself in a position where a great leg putt will not stop closer than that. So always the strength of my game, served me well over time. But yeah, that was kind of a 72 holes there without a 3 putts, but I suppose a pretty good accomplishment.
So what do you think nowadays in terms of two things? You're using a basic ping answer 2. Was it a beryllium copper one or just the manganese?
Yeah.
Okay.
The second one, the silver stuff. Yeah.
Okay. You got that one. You got a very basic putter.
Yeah.
Nowadays we got $600 putters that can do everything. And then you also have this whole aim point system. What are your thoughts on the high-tech putters and on this whole country line dance routine over your line to figure out, is it a little bit off or this way or that way?
Okay. First, we'll talk about equipment. I don't think it really matters a whole lot, quite frankly. I mean, if a player is missing the center of the putter face by half an inch, you suck. I mean, you can find a putter that's got a little more face stability, or it's not gonna affect a 30-footer by 2 feet of distance, or whatever, right? So there's an element that's like, yeah, I just soon see golfers learn almost with a piece of equipment that's more challenging, right? But then It doesn't make sense to go out and hamper yourself. If technology can help you, great, use it. So I'm careful about, I don't want opinions that are not formed by either testing or science or whatever to invade my coaching. But I still say that, gosh, here it is, 40 years later, and still a lot of the best players in the world are using the same putter that I used, basically. It might be, German stainless steel versus whatever, but it's the same idea, right? Because when the patent ran out on Karsten's answer 2 designs, then Scotty and everyone else is, pumping them out, and so it's basically the same piece of equipment with a little bit of a different feel. So I just don't think that, if it's Cam Smith or whatever, isn't he using basically a ping answer, just Scotty's version of it? And so now you get into lab putters and things like that, where it's entirely different technology. I've got a 12-year-old kid, it's a pretty good player, and he's got an Adele putter that has like the complete reverse face balance. The toe sticks up in the air. He does fine with it because that's what he's used.
Can I just jump into with this? I use the Adele Torque B E3 model putter right now with the total circular grip.
I don't understand a round grip. Like when you have a flat spot on the grip, it gives proprioceptively, you have a better idea knowing a square clip putter face. There's a lot of research that says that you will have better awareness of where the putter face is if you have a flat spot on the handle, if the grip's installed correctly.
It may be different from Asian people, because I tell you, I have that flat spot and I start flinching. I have it round in my hand and it feels just comfortable, and I'm a solid putter. But
Yeah.
it changed my game because I was doing
Yeah.
the long putter for a while
Yeah.
because I was so flinchy with the flat spot.
Huh. Huh. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. So there are so many factors. Like, hey, if it's working fine, I'm not going to say, hey, you must change. I'm not that type of teacher. Now, when it comes to aim point, so I work probably, I would say, 30% of my coaching business is with kids, and the rest is adults, and it's weekend warriors and frustrated golfers and all of that. And I get asked aim point, which is your second part of that question. I don't use it. But I was asked so many times, well, Rick, what do you think of aim point? So a couple of years ago, I said, well, and I have to answer. It's like, well, I don't really have an opinion because I don't know it well enough, right? So when I say people standing halfway down their line, straddling, whatever, and so I decided I need to go through. I went through an Aim Point Express clinic, just as a fellow student. So we hosted an Aim Point certified guy at the club I was at, and so I just participated, and it makes sense to me, but to be honest, with my background, I felt like a beginner. I mean, I felt like okay, this is all a new language to me. There's no reason for me to adopt something like that because it's like, oh, now what? I'm going to go through this process to try to be as good as I am currently at reading greens just with what I think is just my eyes, right? But we're multi-sensory humans. So those of us that read putts with our eyes, so to speak, and don't use our feet, I think we're picking up clues through our feet anyway. There's those that will attack because they think it affects pace of play and it just looks bad or whatever. And my feeling is something like I just more and more I have students or even some college kids that I've spent time with that use it, and if it works, I'm not talking them out of it. And I don't often steer people towards it unless, as we've worked on sort of a conventional way to read greens, if they're just lost and it's just not working, we'll go towards it. But I think over time, it's going to be because of the trending of it, using lines on golf balls and aim point. I mean, I see it all the time now. And are these kids or people becoming better putters because of it? That would be a study of how do you know how good they'd be without it, had they practiced, a different way.
The people at home should also realize that when you had 0 3 putts at the Masters, you also read all the greens yourself. You didn't use your caddy's help.
Correct. I've had wonderful caddies. So that year that you're speaking of, I just employed one of the club caddies. It was back in the day when I don't know if I think at that point players could bring, tour players could bring their tour caddies, but for many years at Augusta, the tour caddies were not allowed to caddy. So all the top players would have their Augusta caddy.
Well, it's interesting to me because, from what I remember reading or hearing, when Fuzzy Zeller won, a lot of the credit was because his caddy helped him read the greens.
Hey, that works. So this is going to be, I'm a pretty humble guy, but it's like, honestly, there was no tour caddy or any Augusta caddy that could read greens as well as me. So that was just now that might not be an accurate statement, but that was kind of how I felt. So it was an area of the game I was very confident with. And I'd say that obviously it worked great for Fuzzy and Ben Crenshaw, and, they, kudos to their caddies. But I think it's like a parent. If I keep doing things for my kids are never going to learn to do it on their own. Players need to learn on their own. I mean, we have an epidemic of, they hit a bad shot and it's YouTube, it's TikTok, it's Instagram. It's like, well, ask the right questions. Like, why the hell did the ball do that? No, my right elbow. It's like, no, okay, no. What did the club do to the ball to make it go that direction? And so I just think that we're kind of in a I don't think we need to have our kids necessarily master longhand multiplication. But like kids, you say, okay, here's a pencil and paper. What's 232 times 417? They may not be able to figure that out, right? They don't need to unless the systems go down. But I think that in golf, there's far too many players that don't understand what's actually happening, right? And so, and that I don't mean that critical of golfers, but I think too often, it's like, what did I do wrong? What did I do wrong? It's like, I'm more the type of say, well, what do you think went? What do you think happened? And we'll find the answer together. I'm in Seattle, Washington. We got a pretty seasonal aspect to golf up here, and there's some folks that continue their training kind of through the rainy, cold seasons, but a lot of people kind of set it aside and then come back. So as a result, kind of an in-person. I'm predominantly an in-person coach. I prefer that. I feel like there's an awful lot of golf instructors that are probably making between 40 and 70 grand, and it's very expensive to live up here. So I think the industry sort of leads us to, as entrepreneurs, into a different way of doing things. I think that if we're always tweaking, and because I'm going to go see my instructor again, I'm on my weekly visit. Is it okay for the instructor to say, you're fine, or you haven't put in the work, get back to, doing these drills or whatever. I just think that the business model, and I think that most really good coaches or instructors are, I don't want to say grossly underpaid, but it's an industry where a lot of experts don't make much money. And so then we're tempted to, figure out other ways, whether it be ask or suggest to students they should take more lessons than are needed, but again, it goes back to kind of the conversation about I'm probably highly influenced with how I learned. I would say it's of no financial benefit to me, but I would say if people need to take their resources and make sure they're getting out and playing enough golf, because you just won't be you will never develop into a really good player if you're not on the course playing, hitting balls off of a mat, one after another has its limitations.
I got another tweet for you. It's a great one. Should golfers be training to be cooks or chefs? Is elite performance like having someone else's recipe and shopping for the ingredients, or more similar to looking in the refrigerator and pantry and creating a delicious meal from what you have on hand?
You've played enough golf, I'm sure, that you get out there and it's like, here's the ball sitting on a slope in between tufts of grass or up on top of 4 inches of Bermuda or whatever, and that you don't get to phone a friend, especially in a tournament. It's like, so adaptability, strong critical thinking skills, all based on understanding cause and effect and the interaction of golf club and golf ball. I've failed if my students haven't grown in their understanding of cause and effect. What do I do if this happens? And we can try to anticipate all those different situations, and the time of year when we have access to the back end of our range, we're hitting off grass May through September, but now we're back on mats. So we'd have to go on the golf course. But, I can't anticipate every golf shot that golfer is going to face the rest of their life or even in the next round of golf. So I want them to be able to pass the quiz of, okay, what adaptation should I make to do my best from this situation? And so that would be kind of like you can tell by looking at me, I enjoy eating. So, hey, Food Network, Chopped or whatever, here's a basket of ingredients, make something. Well, I think golf, there's sort of a correlation there. It's like, my body doesn't feel right. Okay, I can't carry it 250 over that bunker today. What do I do? And we're going to have to, my experience as a player, playing in tournament golf, it's like, even when I was younger and more fit and whatever, it's like, man, some days you just don't have certain shots. Well, what are you going to do? And so I think Tiger famously, won a lot of games with his B or C game. And so his best obviously was dominant, but he obviously did just fine when he felt like he didn't have his stuff. So I think some training along those lines for golfers of all different skill levels is very important.
So let's get back to your younger days. This is kind of a natural segue. You're shooting up the junior ranks. I see that at one point there's a photo of you in the Walker Cup. You're on the winning team, I believe, in 1983.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it looks like you're getting ready for a movie.
Mm-hmm.
You got the style and clothing. I don't know. It looks like you're wearing a dress shirt and dress pants actually playing golf. Can you explain how you're basically playing almost in a shirt and tie type situation?
Yeah. So other than the lid, the whatever you want to call it, the rest of it was sort of USGA issued. So the story's going to be far less boring. It's like, yeah, that was our uniform. So whether I wore the gray sweater vest versus a long sleeve, whatever, very traditional. I think it was, there's a company called Corbin that did do dress menswear, and they had some, so that long sleeve shirt was sort of a jersey kind of cotton blend, whatever, not a dress shirt. So it actually was golf clothing, but just more formal. But I had to, kind of win in Rome. I had to put on the sort of the UK cap, kind of the tweeted whatever derby cap or whatever. So yeah, I've had some comments about that. Bring that back, But
Right.
yeah, so the rest of the team didn't look entirely different that day, other than what was on my head.
When did your superpower mustache come into play? When,
Hmm.
what age were you when you're like, you know what, it's time for a mustache?
Yeah, it was somewhere during college. I don't know if it was sophomore year, junior year, or whatever. But so it's hardly there, and then I've got to cover some extra chins these days. So, yeah, so that was an era, right? Lots of hair, a little stash. That was 40 years ago. Things have changed.
All I'm demanding is perfect honesty here. You're at BYU. You're, tearing it up on the golf course, and you got the stash. Were you a ladies' man back in the day?
No, I was not. Actually, never was. Never was. But so I was, a non-Mormon dude at a very Mormon school, and
Right.
so I did not meet.
It's like letting a fox in the hen house.
Well, I didn't have that experience, sir. Typically, both the males and females on campus back in that day, that was like their opportunity. It's like, hey, they're not shopping at the corner grocery store. They're at Amazon now. As far as looking for hooking up with a spouse. And so guys that had not been on their Mormon mission and weren't no, he's not a candidate. So, but I was fairly shy. All about academics and playing good golf. So it probably served me well. And then I met my wonderful wife, after school. So after getting out of BYU, but no. So I just had a conversation with one of the boosters for the University of Washington golf program. Guy I got to know pretty well, and we were talking about just that dynamic. There's these guys. All of a sudden they meet a girl, and all of a sudden it's tougher to balance academics and their golf and everything. And I just not that the girls. I don't want to go on record as saying girls are a distraction. They're wonderful, but it's like I just it's an awful lot of work to keep up on your academics and play D1 college golf, and so I think it worked out just fine.
And trying to figure out if the girl you're dating is crazy. That would be the third part.
So maybe even the good ones are slightly crazy. I know.
Right.
I know my wife thinks I am. So that goes both ways.
So here's the last question I'm going to ask, kind of about your junior days. Is you're obviously from Seattle, and there's Freddie Couples a few years older than you. How much are you seeing his name pop up in the newspaper, and you're trying to use that to motivate you or inspire you? And did you run into him during your junior days?
Yeah, sure did. So he's a few years older than me. So like in junior golf back in the day, kind of 3 years was kind of the separation as far as the kind of the age groups that you'd compete against. And so when I was 14, he was 17, kind of starting to age out of junior golf. And certainly we played in some of the same tournaments. We had a tournament, a kind of a local, like let's say Seattle area tournament. It was called the Washington State Match Play, and I met him in the finals. So I worked my way through. So I played in the older age group and managed to get through the semi all the way through, and met Fred Couples for an 18-hole finals, and took him to the 19th hole. So kind of hung in there with him, and obviously he had prodigious length, his whole career. And first hole at West Seattle Golf Course, which was our 19th hole, is a kind of, to me back in the day, that was a long par 5, and I had a good drive and a 3-wood down there 50 yards short of the green, and he flew a second shot on the green and easy 2-putt birdie to finish me off. So I competed against him, and then once on tour, we were friendly. I mean, it wasn't like best buddies, but we'd have a lot of chats about. He's a big Seattle sports fan, and so even though he was living elsewhere at the time, he still followed Seattle sports. So we had a lot of good conversations. But yeah, certainly, he was kind of not just a big name out of Seattle. Obviously, super popular player and still is, and great guy. And but I wasn't so much, hey, I want to be like Freddie. It was just, hey, I wanted to play and compete at the highest level, and he just happened to do it earlier than me, and obviously better. I had because of the success you sort of referred to, it's like I had a lot of self-confidence, and I get asked now, how do you develop that? And it's like, well, shoot, um, I had the easy way, right? I was confident because I was kicking everybody's butt already, and so when somebody hasn't had that pathway, right, how do you develop that self-belief and that confidence? And so there's ways to do it, but yeah, I kind of won at each level as I was moving forward. So my self-belief was based, there was some evidence behind it. So but anyway, and Fred did the same.
Well, that's an interesting, question. Like, what comes first, the performance or the confidence? Obviously, if you're performing well, you're going to have confidence. But if you're not performing, do you just drum up this confidence based on, your hopes and desires of being good?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a tough one. Because most players don't have, right. There's usually just one winner each week or each tournament, and is a top 10 something that's going to trigger confidence, or where does it come from? And I think it's like kind of the attitude. So you're saying it is possible, right? It's so, but I feel there's the sports psychology approach, kind of the mental side to help develop, and I have an understanding of that. I've studied that, but that question's better answered by someone in that field. But I'd say from a sort of a skill training and technical side, like I spoke earlier, I think adaptability, the ability to figure things out and develop the skills to hit a number of different shots, can alleviate some of the worry and the anxiousness, because it's kind of like the attitude, well, whatever happens, I got this. And whereas somebody that's just really good at striping 7-irons off a mat may like, holy cow, I got this downhill side hill lie and 6 inches of grass. What do I do? Rather versus the person that says, I know what to do in that situation. Yeah, you're hitting a wedge and you're, laying it up or whatever. And I just feel like how that ties into sort of the confidence and the self-belief is more, it can help, right, with the anxiety is it's like, okay, whatever comes my way, I can figure it out. And sometimes it's taking your lumps and pitching out. And so I think I probably helped me win tournaments, but it also helped me to handle, the situation and I getting into swing technique and stuff. I developed sort of a matchup in my swing that I felt like I could hit good shots even when my heart rate was elevated and my brainwave activity was going crazy. And, we want to control those things and get more into flow state. But I don't care who you are, you're going to have a shot when you're scared, whatless. So, so you want to have, I think, a technique that can hold up in that situation.
In the 1986 BC Open and the 1994 Walt Disney World Oldsmobile Classic, the last two holes, what was going through your head as you are finishing, obviously, your last two holes and going for the win? What are the circumstances? Are you nervous? Are you excited?
Like everyone else, you question, right? So you do have some thoughts that run through your head. 71st hole, the BC Open, so it's a long time ago, par 3. Pretty narrow green from, I don't know, probably hitting a 5-iron or something like that. It's a shot you got to hit. And I didn't flush it, but I think I left myself a 30, 35 footer. And then, of course, because I'm a good leg putter, I managed to get it up close and finish it off. And I believe I might have had a 2-shot lead at that point. But I know standing on the 72nd tee, I had a 2-shot lead. And I think I was playing with Larry Mize and Howard Twitty. It's a hole that had some kind of couple of ponds right off the fairway on the left side and kind of dense trees on the right and probably 35, 40 yard wide corridor. And I hit kind of I didn't have the Tiger Stinger, but I had something similar where I felt like I could, kind of hit a low straight one up the fairway, and I pulled it off, which was a relief. I was nervous, right? Let's face it, it's a big situation. And Larry Mize hit his tee shot out in the right trees, so I felt pretty good. When I'm waiting to hit my second shot, Larry hits some miraculous shot through the trees up there that was going right at the hole. And I'm like, holy crap. It's like you kind of feel like you have it and like, oh, what's going to happen here? But he had a great shot up there about, 20 feet from the hole. And then I smartly pins right over a little pot bunker. And so I chose the correct target out to the left and with a 9-iron and completely blocked it where it's going right at the hole. So now I'm nervous, thinking, oh, what'd you just do? And it managed to carry the bunker up there and be about 12 feet from the hole. So got away with kind of pushing it. Finished that one off for the first win, and then eight years later was Disney World, and I think I had 1-shot lead and 17th hole at the Magnolia course. You drive across water, and there's rough, and there's bunkers, and so I slightly bailed out to the right side, just into the rough, and for me, Bermuda rough was always less predictable. So I got 6 iron to the green, pins back right over a bunker. Again, choose a target well left of the hole and push it again. So it's interesting. I hadn't thought of this similar shot, but heading right at it. And distance control was always the difficult thing out of those lies, and carried just the perfect distance and up there about 2 feet from the hole. And so made birdie to go to the 18 with a 2-shot lead, and similarly hit kind of my squeeze driver down the fairway between the trees and got on the green and 2-putted. So in that one, I think I was paired with final round with Craig Stadler, and he kind of made a run. I had a lead, and he made a run at me, and I kind of held it off and got that win. That's the end of the wins. There were 2, a lot of other close calls, but those were the 2 wins, and both of them involved. I felt, and I think it helps with my coaching, that I felt the nerves. We weren't measuring heart rate and brainwave activity, but I was able to execute shots despite that. And I think that probably influences my coaching. It's like, hey, we're going to teach you how to breathe and get your heart rate down and get your, get an alpha theta brainwave state as opposed to beta. But I tell students all the time, you're going to have to hit a shot when that stuff ain't working. Thanks for the memories.
No problem. What clubs are you using for your second win? I mean, what clubs are you using, and how far, for example, do you carry your 8-iron at that time?
At that time, probably 8-iron was probably 145 to 150. I was probably right in the middle when it came to driving distance and all of that. And guys and gals are spending a lot more time in the gym, and we got great athletes playing the game. But there were still great athletes playing back in my day. I've done some tests, and it's been a while, but I know that from the days early days where, well, let's say we were using wooden heads and steel shafts and things like that, and I was still using that in like 1991. I saw ran across some old videos and coming down the stretch, almost winning in Hartford. I was using a wooden driver in 1991. So it's 30 years or so, but I would say equipment itself, the test, I'd say equipment is 30 yards, just roughly. Okay, so I know it changes a little bit, but at kind of mid-level clubhead speed, I would say that equipment is added 30 yards of distance, and so we were maybe 265 as a driving distance average. That's a lot different than today, which is now about 300. And so, and then you just extrapolate that, irons, we weren't hitting 6 irons, 200 yards. It was like 175, whatever it is. And so, but we know, you and I both know lofts are different on the irons and things like that. A lot of different factors, but a lot of great players back then. There's obviously more depth now, but yeah, we hit a lot more mid irons into greens than today's players.
So after 17 years on the tour and with earnings of $4,012,299, that's the exact figure off the internet, you were playing in the Merrill Lynch Invitational and you tear your thumb ligament at the top of your swing. What happened there?
Yeah, I had been playing hurt for about 15 months. So that my left thumb, every single swing I made, it was pretty painful. Meaning in transition from the top down, when the load of the golf shaft or the grip, kind of hits that thumb, it hurt a lot. And, I was seeing specialists and having MRIs and the whole thing, and nobody could tell me what it was or what could be done about it. And, I had played hurt long enough that now my playing status was in jeopardy, meaning exempt status, because performance is suffering as I'm playing hurt. And I wasn't eligible for the medical extension, which is like, hey, I'm going to take time out and get something taken care of. I had to play through it. And so as a result, my performance was getting worse. And then finally, that Merrill Lynch thing was basically a corporate kind of charity event. And I, on one par 5, the 15th hole, I decided, hey, I'm going to really try to crank one down there. and basically in transition from top to bottom, it was like I felt as if I could hear it rip, just like there was a tear, similar to taking a sheet or whatever and ripping it. And it was excruciatingly painful for a little while. And then I guess it went numb, and just my hand or that thumb area just started swelling up big time. And so obviously I knew something blew up in my thumb, and I was in surgery 2 days later and to repair that. And that was pretty much the end. I was already sort of, because of family and kids age and playing like garbage and, and things like that, I was considering hanging it up, but that one definitely was the final blow. And those kind of injuries, I think it's still the same today. I mean, we get ligament tissue that just doesn't heal up well, or it certainly takes a long, long time. And I didn't hit a golf ball for a year, was unable. I was in a brace and everything else. So that was kind of the end. That was, I think, 2003. Had a lot of 17 years of playing prior to that. It was all good.
I think that is the same injury that Anthony Kim had, that he also didn't come back from.
Mm-hmm. Could be. It's like, it's so subtle, it's small, right? And different sports have different areas where, I don't even know what turf toe is or whatever. But I mean, you get these small things that you just can't deal with depending on your occupation or your sport. And so, yeah, if that's what Anthony had, then I totally understand it. And right, it's just, there's a lot of load into certain areas of our body or joints and that sort of thing. And that one just got compromised. And then obviously I don't know if I had, 15 months prior just said, okay, I'm hanging them up until it heals. I don't even know if that would have been, effective, right? I needed surgical repair, and they drilled holes in the bone and tied things through it and everything else. But yeah, it's tough. I mean, it's interesting, like the Anthony Kim thing. It's fascinating how much interest there is even today, right? Like this legend, sort of thing. But yeah, for a very brief period of time, he played some phenomenal golf. But yeah, he's been away a long time.
I think he's kind of a legend now in terms of he beat Sergio in the Ryder Cup. He makes maybe like 11 birdies at the Masters one year, setting like a record for the most birdies in a round. Mm-hmm. Wins a few times. He's got this cool belt buckle, and then literally disappears with an insurance policy. He's apparently in Dallas somewhere, long-haired, tattooed, living a whole different lifestyle.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, hey, hope he's happy and hope things working out. There is life outside of playing professional golf, and it's like, and it helps if you're sitting on a big insurance policy, so, right. Yeah, for many players, I mean, there's a lot of guys my era that, are still struggling along just to pay the bills. And, this whole tour retirement plan thing is, for most people, it's not enough to live off of. Right. So you're still gutting it out, but, current players don't have that problem.